How do you find the right first users for your no-code app? There is a right first user and there is a wrong first user. They're not all created equally. So while you're working towards your launch, you might be thinking, I need to just get any users I can to come on board. You actually want to be identifying the right people first. If you fail to do this, you could end up launching a really great product, but ultimately get really bad feedback. And you're not going to be able to differentiate that because you're just intaking feedback from the users who you have. The wrong first users on the right product can ultimately destroy that product. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how to identify the right first users or early adopters for your app so that when you launch, you can bring them on board, get the right feedback, and grow from there. Stick around until the end because we're going to go through 3 questions you need to be asking in order to filter these early users, and each one of these questions is equally important to the success of your launch. My name is Kristen. I'm the co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps. We help non-technical entrepreneurs build custom apps so they can launch their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses all without coding. All right, so we're going to run through these 3 critical questions you need to be asking in order to identify your app's early adopters. But before we go through the questions, we need to talk about what early adopters are and why you need them versus the general user within your target market. There's a book called Crossing the Chasm. I actually have it on my shelf here. And in this book, you learn what an early adopter is, and not only that, but the importance of having early adopters. And we're going to run through a really quick overview of what it teaches. The book talks through some really helpful concepts that will guide you as you move into your launch and ultimately your extended rollout with your no-code app. On my screen here is a curve. And essentially, when you're rolling out your app from the very beginning, when you bring your very first users on board to when it is fully integrated into the market, you can look at the users who come on board your app as being in different groups. These groups are innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. Now, the book title, Crossing the Chasm, specifically speaks to this section right here, which is labeled chasm on the screen. The idea is if you can bring on board your innovators and you can bring on board your early adopters, and you can solve their problems with your product effectively, then you can ultimately have a better time crossing this chasm, which is what most businesses or products never make it over. Once you do make it over that chasm, you can release to the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. And these sections here make up the majority of your target market. So the key is to make sure you're able to find the early adopters and solve their problems with your product so that you can cross that chasm and reach the larger section of your target market. Now, for the sake of implementation, I'm going to simplify this just a little bit. And the 3 questions we're going to be going over in this video speak to finding your early adopters. So let's quickly run through what each of these groups is. There's something that a lot of people don't think about when they're launching their product. Your app is a solution for your target market. It solves some problem that they have. And you can have a really broad target market that has the exact problem that you're solving and that needs the exact solution that you are creating. But that doesn't mean everybody in your target market is going to want to use your app. You have to find the people who do want to use the app. Imagine you have a business and your app is going to help the operations run more efficiently within the business. Now, let's say within this business, there are 2 key employees who would be users of the app, and they would be managing the operations. So these 2 employees both have the exact same problems as they manage the business's operations, and they're both looking for the exact same outcomes. But one of these employees might be the type of person who is constantly looking for better and better solutions. They're seeking efficiency, and they really just want to optimize everything they do. Now, the other employee might be the exact opposite. They might be the type of person who really just likes the way things currently are. Maybe they don't like change. Maybe they are resistant to new systems because if things are working, then why try to make it better? Or really, why try to spend the time adopting a new solution? Because isn't that just going to take more time in the first place? So you can see while these two people might have the same problems and need the same solutions, really, they might want very different things just due to their mindset or their personalities. These are things you need to be thinking about with your product as well. If you were to create this app and bring both of those people on board as users, well, you're going to get vastly different feedback. Even if the app is being used for the same situation to solve the same problems, some might be good and some might be constructive, while some might be really bad, and that shouldn't reflect on your product. So you need to be bringing on board the type of user who is actually going to want to use the solution and want to use a different solution, and is therefore going to give you the right feedback to help you grow your app thereafter. Coming back over to our model here on the iPad, those people are the innovators or the early adopters. Innovators and early adopters, they're not afraid to try new tech or new solutions, and they're not afraid to try new tech that still has some bugs or isn't as shiny or flashy as some of the other solutions out there might currently be. Now, there is a little bit of a difference between innovators and early adopters. Innovators are kind of like the people you see who line up around the block 6 times when Apple releases a new product, and they have the last 10 versions of the product, but they still want the new one just because it's the new one. The way I like to define early adopters, on the other hand, are people who still like the new tech, the new solutions, but they have a more specific need for those new solutions. The reason why these groups of people are important is because when you're launching the first version of your product, it's not going to be perfect. It is going to be something that needs feedback and needs iterations. And these are the type of people who are going to come on board regardless of its newness or regardless of the bugs or even any visual flaws they might see. These are the people who will look past those things and give you feedback on the product itself. With that feedback, you can mold it into something that is consistently adoptable by the wider target market as a whole. You can cross that chasm and come out into the early majority and the late majority. The early and late majority are the types of users who want better solutions for the problems they're experiencing, but they want a little bit of proof first that the solution works. They are going to want the app to be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit less flawed. The early and late majority is really when you are rolling out your product to the wider market. And that brings us over to the laggards. These are the people who are generally resistant to change. They don't like coming on board new solutions or new products unless it's kind of as a last resort. They're not going to make any changes until there is unarguable proof that this solution is better and they really need to adopt it. So when you launch your pilot app or your first version, you're bringing your early adopters, your innovators on board. They're going to be looking at the product itself. They're going to be looking past any first version blemishes and giving you the feedback you need in order to come into the rest of your target market, the early majority and the late majority. And as you solve their problems better and better, and your product grows its user base and your brand starts to grow, then you are going to be able to start creating a reputation. You're going to be able to build references, testimonials, a market presence that ultimately will start to bring those laggards on board. And that brings you into the later stages of your rollout. So we really want to focus on those early adopters, because again, they're going to be the ones who have the problem and who are really seeking the benefits of your app or in a better solution, but they're not going to be as resistant to coming on board a first version of a product. Now, when you're working up to your launch, you might be thinking, I'm really just having a hard time getting any users. How can I then go and filter for these early users? There are a ton of tactics that you can use to build up your user base. And we're not going to go through all the different tactics you could possibly use in this video, because the reality is pretty much any tactic can work. If you look online to see how other people are building their user bases, some people are going to swear by doing it one way, other people are going to swear by doing it in a complete opposite way, and you're going to find everything in between. And the reason is because all of those tactics can work. And if someone is swearing by a tactic that they've used, then it probably worked really well for them. The key is choosing a tactic and then executing on that consistently. And that's where most people fall short. It's with the consistency. They might go and do 5 different posts on social media, not see anyone sign up to be their early adopter, and think that that tactic doesn't work for them. Or maybe they'll send 10 emails and not get a response, and then just give up on email outreach altogether. Generating leads, building a user base, it's very much a numbers game. You are going to reach out to a certain volume of people or a certain portion of your target market, and only some of those are going to convert into being your users. So the question becomes, where do you have access to your target market where you can reach the most people? When you've identified that, now you need to execute on that consistently, because unless the consistency is there, you're never going to accurately be able to find what that conversion rate is and therefore be able to optimize on it. Now, there's another key component of this that you need to be thinking about when filtering for early adopters. When you are trying to reach a large volume of people, I'm not talking about just going and blasting them with updates about your app or just talking about your product. I'm talking about having conversations with people in your target market. Conversations lead to conversions. And part of that is because it's through conversations where you're going to learn how to talk about your app in a way that resonates with people, and who needs to be coming on board first versus who needs to be coming on board after you've started the later stages of your rollout. In having those conversations, you can start to target your early adopters with the 3 questions that we're going to talk through. Let's quickly look at these 2 spectrums here on the screen. When you're identifying your early adopters, you need to look at whether they need the solution you're creating and whether or not they want the solution you're creating. And those are different things. Some people within your target market are going to need the solution, but they're not going to want the solution. Those are going to be more so your later majority, the laggards. They're only going to adopt the solution once they absolutely have to. Some people are going to want the solution, but they're not necessarily going to need it. That's the very far end tip where we have those innovators, the people who line up around the block for new Apple products without really needing it. While we do want to be targeting early adopters and some innovators, the innovators still have to need the product in order to give you the right feedback on the product. So you need to find this sweet spot where these users need the solution and they want the solution. The want is the part that's going to allow them to come on board a product that's in its first version. And the need is what's going to allow them to come on board and actually use that solution in real life applications and give you helpful feedback. And that leads us to our 3 questions. The first one is, if this person fails to solve the problem they currently have, how much of an impact is it going to have on their job or their business or their life? When you ask this question, you're going to find a sliding scale. For some people, not effectively solving the problem that your app solves is going to have a really big impact on them. And for others, it's not really going to affect them big picture. Let's go back to our example of that internal business operations app. For some businesses, an internal operations app to help streamline their operations is going to be a massive need. For some businesses, their operations are so broken and they're forming such bottlenecks that they are bleeding time and money, and their business is failing because of it. However, for other businesses who have the same types of operations, they might not have big bottlenecks in those operations. Their big bottlenecks might be in something like sales or marketing. And yeah, maybe their operations could be better, but what is bleeding their time and money right now is their sales and marketing. If you try to bring both of those businesses on board your app as early users, well, you're going to have a hard time bringing on the one who isn't bleeding because of their operations. You want to bring on the one who really needs a better solution and who is going to want to adopt it immediately. The second question you want to ask is, how much is this person or business currently spending when it comes to time, effort, mental energy, and money to solve the problem they have? Again, this is a sliding scale. Some of your target market is going to be spending a lot of time seeking a solution. Some of your target market is not, even though they have the same problems. You want to be seeking out those target users who are spending a lot of time, money, effort, energy trying to solve this problem. That means that up to this point, they haven't found the right solution. And so chances are they're looking or will be open to looking for a new solution. And the third question sort of builds on top of that. Is this person looking for a better solution than the one they currently have? It's always going to be easier for you to convert a user who is currently in the market for a new or better solution than it is for you to convert a user who could use a better solution but isn't currently looking for one. A lot of people will go out into their target market and try to convince people of the problems that they have or teach people about the problems. And while those people very well may have all of these problems, that is way more effort on your part than it takes to convert someone who already knows they have the problem, they already know they need a better solution, and they're already looking for one. Again, some people are going to be in desperate need of your app, but they just aren't going to want to spend the time it takes to learn a new system. In their minds, learning a new system is going to take just as long as it does to work around the current system they have. That's not the type of person who you want to be looking for right now. Now, the next step is making sure you are launching the right product to those early adopters, because just as you can have the wrong types of users come on board your product, which will ultimately give you the wrong feedback and lead you in the wrong direction, you can also have a really great app idea, but build the wrong features at the wrong time and therefore launch the wrong features at the wrong time. And if you do that, even to the right users, you're still not going to get the feedback that you need. Make sure you're creating the right features and launching the right features to these right early adopters. It's going to be a game changer for your app and the growth of your business. So head to the video on the screen you see here. It's going to help you take that next step, or really that next leap forward. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.